Welcome to FMRPG, the podcast that likes to go to conventions, but really doesn't care for the smell too much. I'm Richie Buzzkill, and tonight I have two people that went to the largest gaming convention this side of Gen Con, PAX U. I've got Kayla and Noland. Kayla, how you doing?
Hi. I'm here. I'm recovering from PAX still, so
You've got the PAX flu.
I have the vid or something. Not the vid. I took like 3 tests when I got home, but something. Brought something home from PAX and it wasn't fun.
Could be that new uh 5G Part 2 that I'm hearing they're brewing up in China right now. Anyways, uh Noland, how are you? Hopefully
I'm
better.
well. I'm well. I'm not dying of the plague.
Excellent. I'm just recovering from getting my shots, so that's fun. So we're all feeling good, as it were. And I'm aggressively dressed as Christmas right now by my red and green lights. If you're not watching on YouTube, I guess we'll start with, you guys went to PAX. You Unplugged. It's I keep thinking of it as PAX East, but that's a different thing that's got video games in it. This is like we took the scissors and cut the cable, and then everybody had to be like, "Oh man, it's Grandma and Grandpa's board game Christmas." Uh, wow, I maybe I'm not recovered from that. Anyways, so Kayla, how did this is your second PAX U, right?
Yeah, I don't really count the first one, so I did go last year, but I only went for a day just to like pop up, and then I ended up working a booth for the entire day, so it wasn't really a full like convention experience. It was more of a like networking experience for me, and then I came back.
Okay, well that's I mean, I count as someone that has run conventions or parts of conventions, I still count working a booth as the convention experience. It's just a selective, burdened few that get that. It's I can't even say joyful. That experience. It can be joyful. It can also be a lot of drudgery. Anyways, Nolan, you just went for the day, right?
Yep. This was a scouting mission for me. I took the train up at 10 on Friday and back at 10:30 on Saturday. Just scoping it out. I had no booth, no duties, no anything. Just wander around and scope it out, and play some games.
Okay, um, let's start in the traditional manner, but let's talk about because I didn't go to PAX U, but I want to know, Nolan, what did you play at PAX U?
Like always, I played a couple kind of indie things with the games on demand folks. I played somebody's homebrew indie thing, and I should actually look up the title of that.
Okay, well,
But I but it was a kind of a fairy tale thing kind of situation where the randomizer was to flip through a random page in a book and stick your finger down on the page and try and interpret that as a scene prompt for what happens next. And the game was the flavor of we were all bibliomancers or some such nonsense, and the flavor of your magic was very much like the kind of book you had. I ended up with a book of famous quotations, and somebody else had uh some more literature type things. Somebody had like fan poetry or oh, what's that show where the brothers hunt monsters?
Supernatural.
Supernatural. Yeah, somebody had supernatural fan poetry as the thing.
Oh, dear
But-
goodness. Oh my.
and you
Oh,
know,
it hurts. It hurts so much.
so that was interesting. And she was demoing her kind of game, and that you get that a lot at kind of a games on demand thing. The other thing I played um, was the folks that had the Session Zero system uh, demoing it in the hall. I played a nice long demo session with them about how they have prompts and stuff for your Session Zero. It's it it has some microscope vibes, but is also kind of more focused on character background generation because people don't write 3-page character backgrounds anymore. Kind of they have some prompts, and it makes it into a kind of a little game, and that was fun too. So
Well,
those are the two things I actually played.
Kayla, you interviewed one of the Session Zero people, right?
Yes.
And that
Yes,
that's
I did.
that's on an episode that will come out before this one. So
Oh,
you presumably no one but me and Kayla have listened to it, but we'll more on them in your
previously.
feed previously on
Yeah,
FMRPG.
so I'm explaining something everybody knows. All right.
Right. But no, that's because not everybody listens to every episode. Unfortunately, you should all be ashamed if you don't. No, I'm kidding. I understand. Um, but that sounds and it sounded awesome. I think I want something like that because I tried to use microscope at the beginning of the campaign and it sort of worked. It sort of worked. A lot more work involved, I think, to get microscope to be that Session Zero that maybe people always wanted. So, um, why don't you look up the name of that game and then
I got it
let's
right now.
see what Kayla got up to.
Kayla has to remember what Kayla got up to. The first day, let's see, I think PAX Unplugged started on a Friday this year. I don't know if they always do Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but so Friday was the first day of like actual events, and the PAX Unplugged system really irritates me the way that they do scheduling.
Well,
Um,
we'll talk about that as a compare
yeah, but
next.
anyways, I got up and I did my like registration for the one. I just wanted to get like one game a day was my target. So I got in an Old Gods of
Oh,
Appalachia game
very nice.
for the day. Yeah, I was super excited. There was only 24 spots for the day, so um or at least for the time frame that I was looking. So I was able to get into that live play on Friday, and then on Saturday Saturday, I used my networking magic and, talked myself into being able to play a game of, Stealing Stories for the Devil, which wasn't actually being ran at the convention, but I found someone at, the booth that was like, "Oh, yeah, I've run that a ton of times. I could totally demo that for you, and if you get enough people, then I'll just run the full game for you." So, we got enough people, and we were able to play that on Saturday, which was really cool. Um
What kind of system? I haven't heard of this system. Is it like a store powered by the apocalypse? Is it like
Mm-mm.
what kind of game
I
is it?
think it's its own system from what I can tell. So basically you get like uh it's a very little character sheet. Um and you kind of are time agents. There's basically like weird things happening across time. So kind of think of like Loki and the Time Police or it gave me Paper Girl vibes, uh, of, like, just, like, some anomaly happens, and then weird things start happening around it, but nobody recognizes or realizes that it's weird. So you kind of create that at the table. You get the opportunity to basically pick your setting. There's a whole bunch of maps, and it's a heist, and so you kind of set up your heist based on the narrative that you as the players drive. So we picked a bowling alley, and that was where this location was taking place. And the weird anomaly was that their heads were turning into bowling pins. and nobody seemed to like notice that that it is like a weird thing that's happening.
Uh,
So
okay. That
yeah,
sounds
so
awesome. Like I'd totally be out for that. And apparently it's a money cook game,
it is a money cook.
but not cipher system. Okay.
Correct. It does not use cipher system. I'm trying to even remember what dice we were rolling.
Hmm.
Um,
I mean, it sounds like more of a story game than a lot of Monty Cooks
yes,
games. So.
the dice are very low key involved. It's a no prep game, so you don't have to like the DM doesn't prep anything or GM doesn't prep anything when you go into it. You literally have the players create the story narrative at the table, and then the characters are doing the heist are like they have to figure out like what exactly they're stealing. And so that could be known before you go into the heist, or that could be an unknown that you're looking for. We decided that it was known that there was a an object of like a bowling ball of some type of bowling ball that wasn't actually a bowling ball. It was filled with like nanobots that were basically under the incorrect assumption that humans should have bowling pins for heads. And they have decided that people are like horribly ill and they need to be like retransformed into bowling pin head people. So um the epicenter of these microbots was one of these weird bowling ball things. So that's what we were going in to try and steal. And we had three character types that you could choose from. You could either play a character who could lie to people as part of their like special move. You could play a character that can lie to objects, and in that, like, you might an example is like you might come across a locked door and you lie to the object and say, you know what, you are just really old and you've been through a lot of time and very weathered and you have not been upkept, and the lock just falls apart. And that's how you get into uh the vicinity. Um and then you can lie to time itself. And so the way that this played out in our story was Tyler was playing with us in that one, and Tyler was playing the lie to time character. He was getting taken back to the back by the manager to be questioned, and the manager wanted to call the police. So he used his lie to time ability to say that the manager had actually forgotten to pay the phone bill this past cycle. And so when the manager picked up the phone to call the police, it was just a dead phone line. There was no ability to call the police. And so you just kind of like tweak the story as you go with these weird lies that you can tell as an ability to like handle or manipulate the story. And there's a card system that the GM has where they can like insert complications throughout. And so that might be someone else is called the police, or we had a like Karen at the bowling alley that was very convinced that we should be getting her bowling pin and or her bowling ball out of this machine and not trying to like extract the one that was causing all of the problems from a different machine during an actual fire, because I lied to some mechanical pieces and caused them to break down, and that caused a fire, which was another complication that we were dealing with. So there was just a lot, like there's a lot of little things that you can add in, and it goes like it can go pretty quickly, the story overall. It kind of depends on how much you want to throw in. But I had a lot of fun. It was a really interesting like concept, and a really interesting way to kind of tell a story by changing little aspects of it as you do this heist. Definitely had some aspects of like uh the I'm spacing the name, Forged in the Dark system um in there, of like being able to like tell things from a different angle. But um definitely interesting to handle the complications with your lies, because that's your like superpower. And when you tell a lie, it always works. It's just you roll dice to find out if you're gonna have complications or not because of it.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Did you play another game on Saturday or Sunday?
Uh, I played in another Pirate Borg. Tyler hadn't played, so I drug him to Pirate Borg.
Well, I will have to ask Tyler how he enjoyed that. I'm assuming you enjoyed as much as when we played
I
that.
actually enjoyed yours a lot better. And I don't know if it was because of the situation that was happening, but our GM was just a little I'm when I say a little, a lot of it frazzled. Like he was snapping at players, and I think it was just because he was on a really strict timeline that
Ah,
he wasn't comfortable with. Because they were doing this gigantic Pirate Borg mashup uh that evening of like I don't even know what they had planned, but they needed the whole room to be cleared by a certain time so that they could set up for their giant Pirate Borg shenanigans. Um,
ah.
and so I think he was just a little flustered trying to like make that happen and tell a cohesive story because the story wasn't necessarily cohesive at all.
That's that. Everybody. Constraints often make art, but sometimes can make just an utter pile of garbage. So that's unfortunate, but I'm sure there was probably still some fun to be had there. It just wasn't as good as well. I was also I was also doing some entertaining, as it were. That wasn't necessarily what I would necessarily have sped everything up to that. How see last fall when we played Pirate Borg. Anyways,
Yes, it's a wonderful example of Pirate Borg, and it was a lot of fun, which is why I told Tyler that we should like try and get into a game of it because I thought he would enjoy it. And I think that he would have had it been a little bit different or less constrained. But and I think he still had a good time despite I just had higher expectations because I had played it before. So
right. Well, and I could see because I ran Morkborg live at one of our friend conventions, so maybe I'll run Pirate Borg next time or something like that. I have many Borgs. I enjoy most of them. But Pirate Borg is definitely an example of things going a little bit differently than some of the other ones. I like some of the drug stuff in there, so probably try to highlight that. Anyways,
they did run a it was all land situation as well, so we didn't actually experience the ship stuff in that either.
well, I will say that the one part of what I'm not I don't I would have to have a lot of time to try and get used to their ship combat because it's not exactly the same system. So and it's also about having big maps and moving things around, and it's kind of different from everything else you do. And so
Yeah, the thing that really threw me off when I was playing it at PAX Unplugged was they had this like ridiculously elaborate and just straight up gorgeous battle map set up. But I was like, this seems weird for a Borg game. It was pretty, but like I don't know that it was necessary. I think Theater of Mind would have been totally fine in that instance as well. So we had a lot of like people fumbling with like trying to move their miniature pieces on the map to help the GM keep track of where people were standing or where people were at, and that just kind of added to the chaos or the clunkiness of the game. Um, which I think Pirate Borg is one of those that I would say absolutely don't need to have a battle map or things thrown out necessarily. It's one of those that you can absolutely play Theater of Mind and have a fantastic time. Um, just kind of narrating. So
yeah, I
to
can.
each their own.
Yeah, I can see that. Basically, I think a lot of games can be, you can kind of like, are you in this? I almost say room scale is more appropriate for a lot of games than like square like everything, you have to move so many squares or whatever. Like you're either on this boat or on this boat, or you're in the ocean between. Like there, you can be anywhere in this space. Tell me where you're at. But yes. So okay, well that's unfortunate, but I'm glad that it seems to be doing very well. Being one of the more popular of the Morborg children. So
Yeah, I mean, it was this wasn't hard by any means, but it was completely sold out every day. So they had tons of interest and tons of people coming by and checking out and playing, which is always a good thing. Like having more people there and engaged and having fun is a bonus. So, but I think Old Gods was the favorite of the new games that I really like Stealing Stories for the Devil too, so I don't know, but Old Gods was a lot of fun to play. That was the first time that I had the opportunity to actually sit down and run through it. I did kickstart it, and I just haven't had the time to, like, actually pick it up and read through to see what was going on there, so
it's a very big book from what I've seen, right? Yeah,
I mean, it's no Swords and the Serpentine.
well, okay, that's fair. Yeah, so okay, well, I mean, it sounds like you were having a good time with games. Did you do any booth stuff? Were you
Yeah, I had all the hats on that
okay?
weekend. I was, of course, I'm affiliated with Geek Therapeutics, so I was working their booth occasionally. I would pop in and pop out. I was doing recordings for the podcast, which you all have had the opportunity at this point to have heard some of the interviews that I did from the previous release. That was a lot of fun, just being able to network. Hopefully we'll have a couple more people that I managed to get contacts from on in the future. And what other hat did I have on? Oh, networking for our nonprofit and just kind of like getting to know more people in general within the realm. I feel like I was doing all of the things, and we happened to run into one of Tyler's old army buddies. Like we had no idea that they were there. And we just ended up picking up our badges at the same time, same place. It was the strangest thing ever. But then we ran into them multiple times throughout the convention, and he's actually working on building up his like network of people because he's working on becoming like a professional GM or at least playing in the space. And I swear, like every time we ran into him, I'm like, stop introducing me to people. I've met enough people. I'm good. I don't need to meet any other people. But they were always like, there was always someone that was very interested in doing something new in the space, so that was kinda cool. I will say about PAX Unplugged was just kind of getting to see everyone and their different takes and their interests and how they are managing like, RPG space and using it or, engaging with it.
You would be I mean, for those that haven't gone to like bigger conventions, you would be surprised that like oftentimes when you're like wandering around doing things, you will end up in the room with the same people over and over and over again. Like it's this weird like effect. It's probably because you're doing the kind of, you have the same taste in something, so you end up doing the same kind of events. But it's just one of those things with like, I get into an elevator. Oh, it's you again. Hello. I've met you for the last 5 years, multiple times per 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 convention. Great, good to meet you again. How's the kids? It's a weird thing when you go to these bigger conventions like that.
Yeah, particularly if you have any kind of niche taste, right? If you're
Right, especially niche taste. Also, you should send that episode or he wants to do professional GM. We did a episode with Tim Woods, which I think is one of the first professional GMs a few years ago. You might send him that episode. I'll link it in the show notes because I think it's still relevant because he did the Green Knight RPG for A24. Uh, anyways,
Awesome. I know he's growing his space, so I'm sure he'd love to give it a listen.
right. Nolan, did you figure out what game you had been playing?
Yes, the demo prototype game. It's not available, but it's called The Open Book. and the designer is BF Stanton, BFSTANTON, on that one bird site
The
that has no
formerly a
name.
bird site.
That has no name.
Yes, it's a placeholder. Clearly a placeholder. Well, I mean, clearly it sounds like you guys had a good time. I kind of wanted to do, because I didn't go, so I'm just kind of like winging it here, but I kind of wanted to talk about like a little bit how it worked and how it kind of contrasted with the last big convention we talked about a couple months ago, Gen Con, because it's only been a couple months, even though it feels like it's been 6 months to a year. So it sounded like, I mean, there was a scheduling thing that was weird that everybody kind of talked about, and I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about it on the show, which was like you had to sign up for your games at 8 o'clock in the morning every day.
I hates is it. Yes, you had to get up at like 7:55 because let's be real, my alarm clock was literally going off right before we had to sign on and get into the system. And then the first day, I don't know how it was I don't know if anyone had problems the other 2 days, but the first day in particular, the system had like a whole conniption about everyone being in the system at the same time. And so Tyler and I both are trying to get into Old Gods, and Tyler actually clicks in before I do, but his doesn't load before mine does. So I end up getting into the Old Gods and he does not get into the Old Gods, just because the internet is doing internet things. And you have to use their PAX app to be able to book things. And it's not super user friendly in figuring out, did you actually get the thing through? Like it says that it went through, but then it goes to like a weird spot and you're supposed to present a green screen when you get up to the check-in, and it's not super easy to navigate back to. So, yeah, that was not my favorite. They sent out a PAX Unplugged survey, and that was like the one thing that I kept continuously dinging them for was do something different, please. Please don't make me wake up super early every day, especially if I want to like hang out with friends or play games until midnight. I don't want to be getting up in the morning to queue so that I can get into a game at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Um, and I think that that's the second biggest difference is from Gen Con in that like scheduling realm, that there's just not a whole lot of options for games. There's a few, not a lot. So one game a day is probably what you can expect to get into feasibly when you're talking PAX Unplugged.
Well, that sounds like a pain in the ass, a royal pain in the ass, because that's not nobody. The thing about most conventions is the earlier the game is, the less in the day, the less likely anybody's actually going to go to it. It's just how everything I've ever seen goes. So gamers are not exactly morning people for the most part. I mean, I know as I get older, I tend to get up earlier, but like let's be honest, you know, this is, if you're in your 20s, you don't want to be up before 10 o'clock in the morning most of the time, especially if you've been partying the night before till 3 in the morning. Anyways, Nolan, did you have fun with this particular system as well?
No, I did not schedule shit because I did not have a legit badge. I totally scammed a badge. And um, so I did not have access to the app, which of course meant I was playing games on demand and demos and so forth. Uh, but that's not like out of character for me. You know, my Gen Con thing where I'll schedule a few things maybe, but mostly play games on demand. And also if there's something interesting on the schedule, I'll go there with generic tickets and try and sneak my way in there. I will say that points us to another area where this is different from Gen Con is this is one price all in, no tickets, no whatever, no extra fees, right, to play an extra game or whatever. It is, you know, you just try and get your ticket lottery in the morning, or you go to Games on Demand. That's kind of your options there. But it is nice to not have that extra expense on top of thing. By the same token, like Gen Con does control demand for some of these games through price, right? Like,
Well, I thought that the GMs set their own price.
yes, at Gen Con they do. At PAX, of course, if you're offering a game, if people get into it, they get into it. If they don't, they don't. You don't. Nobody at PAX Unplugged is getting paid or anything, as far as I know. I mean, I'm not, privy to the internals of the con's workings.
From
But
what I
certainly
understand from talking with some of the pirate board guys, it sounded like they don't get paid per se, but they get like benefits from badges and certain perks and things. Like that's their payment method, is non-payment and other things.
right.
Which is the traditional way most conventions outside of Gen Con have been doing it, which is
Right.
you get so many hours of GMing, you get a badge. And it used to be way back in the Gen Con days, is when they got bigger, you could earn hotel rooms just by
I
running
believe you
games.
still can,
I
but
think you can, but it wasn't this. It's not this.
At this point, it is like 8 hours a day for 4 days to earn a hotel room. Like it's a lot of GMing. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, you're basically being paid. You're basically working the entire convention.
Yeah.
In order to be at the convention, which
and then you get your evenings off, right? Like it's like
right. And that, I mean, it's interesting to me that because this is scheduling is always a problem at every convention I've ever been in. Like because Kayla mentioned the survey, and people always do these surveys after the convention, and the things that people you will all, no matter how good your signs are, people will always say you didn't have enough signs or the signs were not good. You always try to put more signs up and they still say they're not good. And the other thing is your scheduling sucks, do something about it. And I sort of almost at the opinion that there's no good way to schedule things, but PAX Unplugged sounds like they found a worse way of doing it than even Gen Con with its terrible lottery system that is just like literally a Oklahoma land grab is what it sounds like.
So I was actually interested from your opinion, RBK. The only scheduling system I thought was any good was what you explained to me about Big Bad Con. Was that good or was that terrible also?
Well, that you did.
You had some kind of wait list, but it processed each morning.
Yeah.
Well, no, it wasn't a wait list. It was a like you got to pick out two of your top two games basically.
Okay.
To start off with, and you only got to choose two games.
Okay.
And then everybody got that option to choose two games. And then a couple weeks later, after everyone had had the opportunity, had weeks of opportunity to figure out what their top two games would be, then the next round released, and you got two more games that you could add on to that. And then I don't know if they did another round and then just opened it all up, but there was some type of leveled system of releasing.
Yeah, there were two rounds of that, and then they just said sign up for whatever's left.
Okay.
And I think, to me, when you have, and obviously Big Bad Con is it's like a tiny little convention. They are hyper focused on RPGs, and that's the reason they take up so much room in the RPG world. But it's that like I like that idea of like, okay, you can, and I've tried that at running when I was running conventions. I tried that sort of thing, and there were some people that were like really on it, and then there's some people that just wouldn't sign up till they got at the convention. Like, but we didn't have the problem of like there wasn't something else for you to do, or like enough games for everybody to play in. Like we weren't, where Big Bad Con, you definitely, I mean, there was always games on demand, which is the thing. I think this most schedules need that as a overflow. If you're like a really active convention, the overflow of having like, well, these guys have a circus tent over there, maybe you can get in over there, right? If you have, if you know that they have enough space, enough GMs. There's always that, like, but I think that the scheduling, that sounds like a way to make people anxious. Like, seriously, I could see anxiety being a huge problem at PAX U for those people that like have to like set 3 alarms to get up in the morning, and it sounds like a it sounds kind of terrible. And I
And you could
understand
wake up at 8 a.m. and
not getting
at
anything.
8:05
And
you're like, I got nothing to do all day, right? Like
yeah.
if you
Well, and
don't
that
get your
that was
things
the
right.
thing, right? Like I felt like you could only really realistically get one game signed up for through that system with how fast everything just went. Um, and so I that my compare and contrast, if we're talking Gen Con, is Gen Con, I can realistically, if I want to, which I never want to, and I don't recommend to people who like enjoy not feeling like crap after a convention. But if I wanted to, I could theoretically be in games back to back to back from 8 a.m. until midnight, easy at Gen Con. I could probably, I don't even know how many games that would end up being, but a lot of games a day. And so that's a big difference between feeling comfortable in getting one game in per day at PAX Unplugged versus all of the games that I could like physically attend at Gen Con.
Right, but those games you could play from 8 a.m. to midnight, some of them would be games you didn't want to play because you were just trying to pack your schedule. Uh, if you have, and maybe that's not true, but I just, I find that the selection sometimes, like, there are some amazing like hidden gems, but it's really hard to get into those games. And then there's like playing D&D. If that's your thing, great, but if you don't want to play D&D all day, then you're going to have some holes in your schedule, basically.
Well, and that's the thing. Gen Con, I feel like you, at this point in time at least, can completely fill your schedule with indie games or indie adjacent games, not D&D, basically. You can get away with never touching D&D at Gen Con and still have a full schedule. Versus at PAX Unplugged, like there was a lot of D&D going on there too. And I don't know how easy it was to get into. Obviously, I was cutting my schedule short because, or not short, but like I wasn't including D&D as a game that I was going to play at PAX U. That was not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm curious about what that would be like. I don't know because I mean, I think there was a lot of D&D, but it's also in huge demand right now. So it's like I don't know where where that ends up, whether it's impossible to get in, like obviously. I didn't
And one
try
of the
to
things that was
either.
like wildly popular, which was damn near impossible to get into because it filled up so quickly, was they did have Matt Mercer. Story time with Matt Mercer was a thing that happened. I can't remember if that was on Friday or Saturday. I think it might have been Friday. But literally as soon as the doors opened, people were getting in line for this noon story time. And they obviously, it's convention space, they have finite room. So unless you were like not one of the first 100 or so in the door, you were not getting into the Matt Mercer story
Yeah, the
time.
fire marshal has opinions about that too, right? Like,
Yes. Well, I mean, it's always interesting to see about these sort of scheduling things. I do think that the Big Bad Con, or just letting people like reschedule one event a day way ahead of time, and then as things get closer, you kind of like let let people, you can kind of let people fill up games as things go on. But anyways, so they're scheduling what, okay. I don't want to dig too deep into Ken and Robin territory here, but how was the food situation? Because that's an important part of convention. The convention runs on its stomach. Uh How is the food situation at PAX U?
Great, so long as you have time to queue. The location is incredible because the convention center is right on top of Reading Terminal Market, which is this amazing like downtown market thing. It's indoors. It's got dozens and dozens, probably maybe over 100 little stalls, right, of little random local businesses, all with like great kind of local foods and coffees and, you know, vegetable markets and every other kind of little kind of shop you'd want in a cute downtown place like that. And it's literally across the street from the convention center. The problem is when it becomes noon, 12:30, and you dump a whole convention full of nerds into, this little thing, which is, kind of this little market. It's of course got little aisles, that aren't real wide because people are supposed to just walk through this market at a leisurely kind of pace on any average day, and you've just dumped a whole convention full of nerds into these narrow aisles. The queues at these little stalls and stuff get quite long. I mean, if you're like me and you're fine eating lunch at 2 p.m., like it's not so bad. Like I went in and got a delicious calzone at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That wasn't too bad. But yeah, at proper meal times, there can be quite a queue in there, but it is a great location for it.
Yeah, I would say that if you take the scheduling thing out of the equation, right? And we're only looking at everything else, which is like hotels and food and ease of access with public transportation. PAX U blows things out of the water. There's tons of hotel choices just right there. There's easy access through public transportation to get there. Like whether that is taking the train or like flying in and taking whatever bus or Uber, whatever you're using, to get to and from, right? There's tons of hotels that are easily walkable within that space. And then you've got the market which is totally fine and doable. And then there's a ton of restaurants right there too, outside of the market. So it's easy enough to just like plan out dinners for reservation stuff, right? And then have the go-to lunch, and maybe you adjust plus or minus on when you're normally getting lunch to kind of work around the heaviest portion of the crowd. But there was like a bomb Guatemalan Ecuadorian place inside that market. And Tyler got this like just fried shrimp. It was just like 20 fried shrimp for or something. As a to-go thing, and that was really good too. I don't think we ate anything there that was not good. So, definitely a phenomenal, location as far as the food and the housing go.
Well, that
I will say, RBK, we did take your recommendation and the recommendation from the folks on the Discord, and Tyler and I attempted to get into the Cyberpunk Noodle Bar,
yeah.
but it had a line like halfway down the block.
Damn. Sorry.
Turns out other nerds have heard of this.
Yeah.
So
Fucking
Saturday
nerds.
night, while Kayla was having dinner with her folks from Geek Therapeutics, Tyler and I went over to have that, and there was quite a queue there. So I had 4 cocktails and a cheese plate for dinner.
Yeah, but I think that you should really tell the story of your 4 cocktails, because the way Tyler told it, he was telling this to me and to the CEO of Geek Therapeutics, who was laughing. We're both kind of like, yeah, you were trying to get murdered. That's what you were trying to do? Is that like, that seems like what you were trying to do.
I was trying to get murdered?
Well, the way that Tyler told it, it sounded super
We
sketch.
definitely tried to find this speakeasy place, right? And like we definitely like, where the hell is the entrance to this speakeasy place that serves $20 cocktails or whatever? And we were like searching around behind the thing, and I was like, oh, there's dumpster or whatever, like whatever. But like then once we got in, it was a perfectly nice place. Were we trying to get murdered? We were nice to everybody in there. Like, I don't know. Like,
No, Tyler, the getting there part is the
oh,
part
the
that
getting
Tyler
there
made
part.
sound super sketchy.
The getting there part was, yeah, it was hard to find because like it's inside this like boutique hotel thing, and the whole thing is called, it's a bunch of bougie cocktail nonsense. But yeah, the boutique hotel is called like the mortgage and insurance company or what. Like it's not even named after a bar, and then you have to go into this little hotel lobby and find the secret door to the back, and then the guy's rude to you and lets you in.
But it's so what Kayla is trying to lead you into telling is like you were wandering around the alleys in Philadelphia, in the
Yeah,
back alleys of Philadelphia in the middle of the night looking for a bar. Is
yeah,
this okay?
that's
Okay.
absolutely correct. But
All right. Okay.
I don't know. Maybe I'm
All right.
maybe I'm an idiot, but I didn't feel
Well,
danger. But
you may be you may be annulled to this danger because you like to walk around in the dark anyways.
yeah, I
So
walk around DC in under cover of darkness all the time. So
right. Compared to Tyler, who is more situationally aware. Anyways,
yeah,
see earlier
he's more
conversation.
situational.
Oh no, I don't know that that was the case because Tyler was like it was totally fine too, but the way he was telling the story, both myself and the other therapist were like, "What were you doing?"
Yeah, we were one.
Okay, now I understand. All right.
Yeah, we were
Okay.
both we were both fine with it.
All right.
We were probably in danger, but yeah, who cares?
Fair enough. Okay. You had some danger, you had some cocktails, you had some food. Okay. Let's get down to the crux of this question, right? And I think I got Kayla's answer already, but I'm going to ask this question more directly. Are you more interested in 2024 in going to Gen Con or PAX U? Uh, Kayla, I'll let you tell us that first, and then
Yeah, you
Okay.
had a more complete con experience.
So for personal fun, probably Gen Con. For networking purposes and like spending time with people, I think that PAX U is a better fit for that because I just end up having more time in my schedule to spend with friends and to network and to do all of those like things that I wouldn't do at Gen Con or have time to do at Gen Con.
okay.
So
Go ahead, Nolan.
yeah, so I somewhat agree. I think this could be a perfectly viable substitute for Gen Con as a place to get the friends together for the con. Um, it's a totally the opposite time of the year, in the middle of the winter instead of the end of the summer, right? Uh, it's all in the convention center. It's well organized. Once you're in the convention center, like everything's right there. It's all, there's no going across to different hotels. There's none of that nonsense. The location's great. The scheduling's kind of a disaster. So I know a lot of people in our group would be very resistant to that. And I think that's probably the killer flaw there. Something I did want to point out is uh, PAX Unplugged seems to do a hell of a job about open gaming space. Like in the whole event hall, like, you know, even for things like the Warhammer area announcing, as I'm wandering around, there's like, yeah, we're holding tournaments here. Oh, and by the way, there's open space here. There was an open space where you could have beer and play games, and that was packed. But even in the main, convention hall, you've gone to Indianapolis in the Gen Con hall. Imagine if like all those play tables where people are playing Pokemon and all those other card games and blah, blah, blah. There's just acres of tables set out for those kinds of card game tournaments. But they also had just right within those groups of tables, like, oh, by the way, there's free play here too. Just sit down and like do it. So there was tons of open gaming space all around as I wandered the place. And that was great. The housing availability is really great. I decided to come up, I made my final decision to come up. I've been talking about it for a long time, but I made my final decision to come up like Thursday night before, and I was able to get a hotel room right for that.
Which is remarkable, even
Right.
in most conventions. But
Right. I paid too much for it, but not like ridiculous, like I paid more than you'd want to, but like it was available and it was not like ruinous. Right. The dealer hall, when I first went through there, seemed smaller for some reason when I first went there, but as I moved through it, it was quite large. I wanted to call out that when I did wander the dealer hall, I found an Exalted funeral booth in real life. I had no idea there wasn't in real life, like,
Well,
Exalted.
there was one at Gen Con as well, but
How
it
did I
was
miss it at Gen Con this year?
it was back there somewhere.
Okay,
there was
apparently I missed it, but yeah,
Yeah.
there was
I
a
mean,
real.
Gen Con's vendor hall is a nightmare
Yeah,
situation.
it is a
Like,
nightmare of
right, but
maze of twisty little passages all around. Like,
Yeah.
PAX has like wide hallways.
yeah, they do
I
have
feel
nice
like that's why it feels like maybe smaller, but also
Yeah.
it's pretty big. But there's more navigation room at PAX.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
definitely.
I feel like Gen
wider
Con
hallways.
applies a funnel system. As you go in the front of it, the aisles are a certain width, and as you get to the back, they shrink, which
Yeah.
is a weird thing to do. If you're, unless I guess it's just the artist alley or whatever, the artist acres or whatever you want to call it, but that's I mean, because a lot of the people I follow had booths there. I'm sort of one of the reasons I wanted to do this, other than to share this experience with the listeners, was I'm curious about PAX U because a lot of my friends on the East Coast end up going to PAX U as well, and some of them go to Gen Con. So like Gen Con sort of being a pain in the butt in some ways.
Yeah.
But this sounds like it's a pain in the butt in other ways, but I could always get around it in the way that anyone gets around it even at Gen Con, which is like you could just put out your tile and say, I'm going to run a game. Who wants to play a game? And sit there for 5 minutes, and you all of a sudden you just have nerds shouting at you like, let's start.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to call out the open gaming space, because the open gaming space, like, they seem to be very generous with the open gaming space.
Right. If you
And
could
I
just
mean,
go ahead, Kayla.
Gen Con didn't have games on demand this past year, and
Yeah.
PAX Unplugged did. So there's
Word
another.
on the street is it's coming back to Gen Con, but I have contacts in that group. It seems like they're coming back.
Well, which is good, because that is like a large majority of what I kind of want from a con anyways. So like that's thus why, Games on Demand was there last year and it was there this year, so I'm assuming that's going to continue. Plus, a lot of the people that are big in that space are East Coast, DC, New Jersey people, so it's
New York, yeah.
New York, New
Philly.
Jersey.
And I will say, I did want to call back, like, Dan, you mentioned this briefly, but for those who don't like to plan, like, you could get badges for PAX Unplugged up until the day of, and that wasn't an
That's
issue.
not quite true.
Well, up until Dan found himself on a train and was like, "Oh shit, Saturday sold out." But you were coming up, we were like 12 hours out. So 24 hours out, you would have been able to get a badge, probably.
That's correct.
So, and you also
Plan
had the
slightly
benefit
ahead,
of
Plan.
throwback.
Don't be like Noland.
Yeah,
Dan had a real badge. He did not like do shifty stuff to get in. He had a lot of people that were double. Well, I ended up being double badged for a media badge and a expo badge because I was working the booth and doing media stuff. And then Tyler picked up one of the booth badges as well because he was helping set up and tear down. Oh wait, he just did set up, but he was helping set up, and so he ended up with one of the expo badges as well. So he had his 4-day badge and an expo badge. Like, we had all of the badges between the two of us. So it ended up being a non-issue, but they did sell out on Saturday this year.
Yep.
Well, you could be like my friend. We called her Two Badge for a while because she wore both of her badges she earned for the every convention. So it'd be the one she bought and then the one she earned, and it was a 2 Chainz reference. Anyways, well,
So,
okay.
Kayla,
Go
okay.
ahead.
I had a question for Kayla. So I don't want to poison your brain with what I think here. But I want to ask you first. Did you notice anything about the demographics of the attendees that was different than Gen Con at all?
Not specifically,
So
but I
my
would
vibe
love to hear your take.
my vibe on it was that there were more younger people than at Gen Con. There was considerably fewer like grognard kind of old-timey people and lots more younger people.
I didn't 100% pay attention, like I was saying, but I could see that
That's
there
I
was a
mean,
younger demographic there in like if I'm generalizing things. Also I'm very much so realizing that I am skewed by my own experience there of like the people that I was spending time with
mhm.
because I did have a lot of like time scheduled out given my experience. So yes, I feel like there was a lot of I don't even wanna say young because I don't like
Yeah, I mean,
I've
we're not
definitely grown out of the category of young at this point, but, like, at
correct.
least my age,
Me
if
too.
not younger, so
Right, yeah. And maybe that's just the fact that it's a newer convention and all the old timers are like, ah, Gen Con is it, and like
Well, I think PAX is a brand built on a web comic.
right,
So like you had to kind of grow up in the, late 2000s to really kind of get, and it became big in the video game space. So like that's going to
right.
skew younger anyways, especially for people that grew, So I can see it. I mean, it's interesting to see, as it grows. I'm assuming, that's just kind of how, new conventions, you do get a good mix, but I think it's just the brand of built on video games. But that's cool. I mean, we need younger people to replace all us olds who are dying off. So um
rumor has it, I cannot confirm that this was the case because I wasn't there, but rumor has it that, like, some of the panels still remained pretty, non-diverse, like, in their in their push towards like what does the new gaming space look like. It sounds like there was still kind of a lot of the old going on there, not as much representation as one would hope in like pushing forward in new platforms and new gaming. I was not there, so I'm not 100% certain. This is just the rumors that I heard about town. But there were also like I don't know that Gen Con has the type of panels that I only went to the one, which was the, Geek Endangerment panel that Geek Therapeutics put on, which you can hear about with my interview with Alicia, but, um, like, that seemed pretty inclusive and a really safe space, and that was interesting to see within the PAX, like, well, in a convention space in general, so I think that there is a mix there that exists. I just don't know. I didn't participate in a lot of the panel stuff just because I was very busy that weekend, but, that is something that might be interesting to check out in the future.
yes. Well, that is a it continues to be an issue in the gaming space, including the controversy with indie dev day recently. But anyways, that sort of has been rectified. So, anyways, I'm glad that you both had a good time. I'm interested to hear. I'm interested to hear the feedback of other people that went after this convention, after this is released. Um, I am really tempted. I can understand the good and the bad, but I'm still kind of tempted to have a new experience. So, of
Yeah, if you
course,
went and if you're listening and you went, hit us up in the comments or on the Discord. We'd like to hear what other people thought.
yes. And what makes it somewhat difficult is it's sort of like that close to that the winter holidays, and so I'd be flying back and forth across the country multiple times within a few weeks of each other. Anyways, uh, and that's not my thing. So, anyways, I appreciate you telling us about this stuff. Is there anything you haven't mentioned yet that you'd like to quickly mention here at the end of the show before I get into the plugs and the farewells?
Nope. If you can stand a little anarchy in your scheduling and are willing to fly by the seat of your pants, it's a good alternative to Gen Con. If not, you might want something with uh, more structure to the scheduling.
And I mean, kind of going off of that, if you're cool with having a just more chill experience than Gen Con, because that's really what it ended up being for me, was like just low key, nothing much scheduled. I just kind of went with the flow of things. Then PAX Unplugged seems like a totally fine alternative.
No gods, no masters. I want to thank, except our friends, friendly friends over at patreon.com/fullmetalrpg who support us and bring you us to you. And I really appreciate their help. If you think that we are a valuable resource, perhaps go over there and join them. And I really appreciate you listening. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.